Welcome to Kim Talks Resilience, where we share stories of insight and inspiration in life, love, and business with resilient women from around the world. Speaking with authors, entrepreneurs, founders, and coaches to learn their strategies for a more resilient life so we can all build the life we love. I'm your host, Kim Hayden. Our guest today is Reesa Woolf, PhD. We're going to find out what her PhD is in because this is very cool. I'm excited about having Reesa here because we're all going to learn something, and I'm learning right along with you. Reesa is an international TED Talk trainer, keynote speaker, and author with more than 30 years of experience preparing CEOs and their teams to speak with confidence. She is an expert in demystifying and eliminating fear of public speaking. This is a very real thing, folks. And some of our favorite actors and actresses and speakers out there are, throwing up in the back before they go out and deliver to us the most important messages that literally change our lives. Welcome to the show, Reesa.
That was such a great opener to talk about how actors and actresses who we just assume can get up and speak to anyone. Johnny Carson was nervous every single night for his entire career. People said when they watched him behind the curtain before he entered, he was always just beside himself. Then he turned on Johnny Carson when he walked out. So it's perfect that you brought that up because essentially that's what I teach.
And think about this. And I want people, and if you don't know who Johnny Carson is, come on, folks, Google him. He's awesome. I used to watch John and Ed McMahon, who later never brought me my check. But Johnny Carson put Jay Leno, Phyllis Diller, Jim Carrey, put these people on the map because he gave them the stage. He gave them a space to shine. And if Johnny couldn't shine, and that should never have been in a sentence together, The Shining and Johnny. But if Johnny Carson had not chosen to use his gifts, imagine how many people we wouldn't know today that have entertained us and educated us and enlightened us. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, Reesa, I always believe that there is a story. There's a little girl or a little boy somewhere that had this thing, and it's what has constantly helped us evolve in our passions that we share with others and become very proficient in. Can you share with us a little kind of insight? Who is Reesa Woolf? And by the way, what is your PhD in?
My PhD is in psychology, but I'm not a psychologist. I just knew that I need that would open doors for me. My attitude is if someone's going to be on the couch, I prefer it being me. What I did was get that along the way. So who am I? You know how there's certain people at meetings, when they speak up, everyone looks at them and stays looking at them the whole time they speak. I'm one of those people, but I have another skill. I can make anyone in the room one of those people. And when I was a keynote speaker at conventions, after I've done seminars for years and years and gotten wonderful evaluations, I thought, I'm going to be a convention keynote speaker, one of those people on the stage, and really do well. And I was very, very good. But I realized I have an even better skill in that I know how to make anyone in the room able to get up and speak on a stage. That's what I do for work. And it's really important for me that people who have ideas and others would get value from them, that they overcome this little glitchy thing called fear of public speaking. That's what I do.
So you actually have been on the stage. You've walked the walk. You've talked the talk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you understand kind of the psychology and the neuroscience that goes into what's creating the blocks. So let's go into what you do. And then I'm going to start asking some questions because a lot of people don't know this about me. And I mentioned this. I don't have a fear of speaking. I have a fear of connecting. And so I turned down keynote options or opportunities locally because I don't know what I'm going to speak to them about because I'm so busy being the host that I haven't created a clear message. And so I turned down opportunities that could actually do something for others and stay within my safety zone, which is here, folks. This is my safety zone. This is my favoriteest place to be. But let's go through what you do. How do you walk somebody through taking them from not engaging to engaging?
Most people can speak well one-to-one. When I say, "Can you speak to one person? Do you have this fear with one person or to a small group?" "Oh, no, I'm great in front of a small group. I can do that easily." But when it comes to a big group, I get too scared because they have a myth in their thinking. And the myth is that when you speak to a large group, you have to be different than you are and better than you are. And how will you reach all of these people? But the truth is, if your small group of 1 or 3, if they were to sit in front of you when you were on the stage, you could talk to them because you already know how to speak to them. When other people come in, they're just 1s and 3s. So really, it's the same exact group, and the trick is this. Look at, if you're in person, look at 1 person or 3, whatever is your comfort amount, and say to yourself, "I know I'm good one-to-one. I know let's just pretend 1. I know I'm good one-to-one. Let me just give that 1 person the same talk that I always give because I always transfer my information well to 1." Do that for about 5 seconds, then look at someone else, someone who's looking at you, and keep delivering your talk only to 1 person. Then everyone will get the value from it. And you really have to kind of make yourself do it because of the strong belief, the wrong belief, but it's strong, that this isn't okay. I have to be different. No, you really don't.
And that brings me to a lot of the misconceptions around public speaking, and the fact that I think a lot of us see the some of these big names and they seem to be so sure of themselves. And I watch them like Mel Robbins. I love Mel Robbins. I absolutely and I think I've said this probably on a dozen shows, and maybe at some point in time, somebody on Mel's team will hear this. I would do anything to have a sliver of a stage with Mel Robbins, a moment with her. But I know that I have to take that first keynote. So
Well, I don't know that that's the step to get there
no.
because you're a look how many why I was happy to come on your show today is you help so many people. That alone is your credibility.
Okay, so but doing a TED Talk or speaking at a large, so there is in Canada, there's this whole stage called the Art of, and it's actually a really cool. They've done such a beautiful job putting this, orchestrating this stage, this business that goes across Canada. And so the art of women in business, the art of
Ooh.
speaking, the art of it's a really great. They did a good job. Their branding is phenomenal, and I love branding. Yet there is credibility, just as being an author, there is credibility in saying, I have been on this stage and this stage and this stage and this stage. How
Mhm.
do we wrap our head around that? And where are the steps? So, that first step of getting positivity within our message. Walk me through. You've got somebody who, okay, let's take our average audience, female coach. She wants to grow her brand and her revenue. And part of this is growing the authority and credibility. And a key component to that is speaking.
Mhm.
Yet
Yes.
she's not. You take her as your client. What are the first steps? How do we move through this?
Typically, when people call me because they're pretty much they're moving up in their career and they realize, "Oh, I can't avoid this anymore. I really have to fix this problem." And frankly, most people keep it a secret. It's a very high level of shame. The fact that you can't sleep the night before, that you wanna throw up before showing up. And I'll tell you some of the reasons that that happens. One is that let's just talk about everyday meetings, which is where you're basing your comfort and your ability. When people show up at a meeting, they kind of know what they're going to say, but they haven't brought in notes. So what they do is they're giving spontaneous impromptu speeches when all eyes are on them. Well, that is just not a smart thing to do. I'm not saying to ever write out your talk. That's always a huge mistake. I'm saying maybe make a sticky note with an outline of the things you're going to say with 1 or 2 words on each dot. If you're on Zoom, you can just paste it right next to the camera and you'll look brilliant. But the point is that you want to know ahead of time, these are the things I'm going to say. Don't, if you write them out, it's just sabotaging yourself. So instead, take the main idea, and it forces you to be conversational with people. Simply explain it either to the camera on Zoom, or I already talked about speaking to different people when you're live. And this way you build your confidence that indeed I can take ideas from my head and transfer them into someone else's head. Once you see that being organized helps you, then go the next level, which is rehearse it ahead of time. You know how most people are nervous the first 5 minutes? That's normal. And then after 5 minutes, they feel more confident, they act more confident. I say, take 5 minute later you, select, copy, and paste it, and act like that when you begin. But also, people who are good speakers, they rehearse the first 5 minutes. They do it so that they're familiar with what they're going to say, and they can also make eye contact when they open. Then everyone comes to you. In other words, you do not ever, ever, ever have to be confident. You might want to throw up the whole time you're speaking, but you turn on your best self because it's easier for people to hear your information.
And proficiency is the reason most people get invited or asked to speak up. So
Mhm.
when we hoard our knowledge, we deprive the opportunity of others growing. And, food, shelter, medication, and education are the things that should be readily available to everyone.
Mhm.
And it is a fascinating. Speaking is, I mean, we go back, we got bards singing, and I mean, the art of storytelling is the oldest form of communication on earth, and yet it can be the scariest. W- When you're working with somebody, I find that I can tell when somebody's scripted when they come on my podcast, and I do everything in my power to pull them out of it. Um, I had a great gal with a great product come on, and it was all scripted, and I kept trying to throw her loops because nothing's harder to engage
Mhm.
with than a script,
Mhm. The
right?
the interesting thing, Kim, is that if you could get someone and say, "Just take your script right now, just turn it over and just tell me one thing. Can I just ask you maybe that's the way you can get them to do it. I just wanna ask you one question just off script. So if you could turn your script over, and that's necessary because otherwise it's just too magnetic for them." When you ask the question, they know every single thing they're going to say. This is the only thing they've talked about for months or years. And once you ask one question and they speak spontaneously, you really hear something. Then you can keep adding and more questions that you're interested in. The reason why people write out their talk is they're afraid, if I only write the key words, I don't know if I can make up a sentence around it. So my suggestion, if anyone listening is like that, take your script that you've already written from your last talk, take a yellow highlighter, highlight the key words in each sentence, and then make your eyes go from yellow highlight to yellow highlight and deliver that alone in your bedroom. Just deliver that talk. And the important thing is that you can like do one sentence at a time, but deliver that same sentence, changing all the words around the key words, because the only thing you really have to deliver are those key words. The words around it just make it grammatically correct. And they have to build their trust the third or fourth time they do it and change the introduction and change the other words. And you're in your bedroom, so it's not a pressure situation. Then they build the trust like, oh, I really can explain this, because it's different from the reality of they talk about this all the time. but they just think they have to be better when they're speaking in person, and that's not true.
I love that phrase, you are good enough. You are good enough if you're being asked to speak. 2 things that I think a lot of that I know I struggle with, trimming down the content. So, let's tackle that, and then after that, timing. Because when people run stages, stages cost money every moment you're there, and being respectful within the time frames that the audience has allotted and the stage host has allotted is really critical. Nothing can get you uninvited than disregarding somebody's timing or schedule. So I'd like to talk trimming down. I think a lot of people who
Mhm.
are asked to speak feel like they have to have almost this verbal diarrhea of everything they've developed in 30 years. How do you find
Yes.
one thing and do a TED Talk is only 18 minutes long? I can't
Mhm.
change I don't feel like I could change your world in 18 minutes. How do
Ooh,
you decipher that?
but when I watch TED Talks, they really do that. They
They
really do,
do.
and they're smooth, and those are Broadway performances. That is different. That's the next level up from convention speaking, but I'll tell you how to trim in it in any talk that you do. When you're writing the talk, think, "What is it I want these people to walk away with?" You know, what is one skill that I have or one ability that I want them to either realize they have or give them a new skill? And then you think, not why I like it, or not how I use it, but talk to their heads. Who's going to be there? What would they find? I would start off with the motivation of why to do it. Then, secondly, I would give baby steps of how to do it. And then I would rehearse it with where they could use this and start and suggest that they start using it on every phone call and every conference call and every Zoom call and every little meeting this whole week. So you make it kind of down to earth. So that's one thing about how to write, so that if you're speaking to a tech group with your topic, you're going to say things in a different way than if you're speaking to new hires at the company or you're speaking to the board of the company. You have the same content, but you know how you're going to adjust it. So that's number one. And two, be prepared for when your time is cut short. It happens frequently. There's a noise in the hallway, or somebody comes in from out of town and they have to introduce themselves. And I'm being all polite. In the meantime, I'm thinking, buddy, you're taking my time. This is my suggestion for that. Before you show up, you take your outline, because you always work with an outline, and put parentheses around some stories, some examples that you're going to cut if your time is cut short. Do not say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I wish I had more time. I had another story to tell you." Don't make people think that they're missing something. No one has your notes. But this way, you can smoothly go through your material. You can't cut your opener, you can't cut your close. Everything else is negotiable. That's a big thing.
How important is story?
I would say that people listen more to stories because, there's three parts of the brain. The most primitive brain, the part of our brain that is passed down from our caveman and cavewoman ancestors, is still alive and well, and that's the one that is the source of a lot of our fears and stuff. Ask me your question again. I got distracted thinking
How
about the
important is
thinking.
story? Because
Ah,
I think a lot of us get caught up in the technical
mhm, mhm.
and
Well,
stories get lost, and
well,
people
the
I know
reason,
yeah, so how
yeah.
important is story?
So two things. One is, I just gave you an example of when I lost my place. Notice how calmly I just asked you. So you don't have to be ashamed when you lose your place, or you can just review the last few things you said. So I just gave a little example of what it looks like when you goof up. You just keep going. You fix it and keep going. I went, that could be the best thing about this information today. All right, stories. Why they work is, don't say, "I'm going to tell you a story," because everyone goes, "Oh, I hate stories." So delete the intro. Simply tell the story, and the most primitive part of your brain cannot help it. It will go like this. What's this? And that's why stories work so well. However, you want to tell your story as briefly as possible. So I'm sure everyone who's listening knows someone who can speak concisely and succinctly. And you say to that person, I want to use this story when I'm speaking next time. Can I tell it to you and would you kind of tighten it up? And they will. And if when you're nervous, you're thinking, oh no, I better say everything I was planning to say. Don't do that. Rehearse with that person or record them, rehearse what they say, deliver it like that because people want the points. But in this day and age, as soon as you ramble off into things that aren't completely necessary, you've lost them. And it's just easier to hold on to people than to try to get them back.
When editing video, we've done lots of broadcast televisions. Our transitions in the openers and closers are typically 3 seconds. So, um, that's I guess it's twofold, is why would anybody wanna listen to my story? And how
Mhm,
much of the story should I share? And how do I stay so there's actually a lot of things that would stop somebody from walking on a stage or walking in front of a group,
mhm,
because if you're trying to count down in your head, "Am I on time? Am I on task? Are they listening? Is this story interesting? Did I tell enough? Did I tell too much?" There's
mhm.
all this going on. Um, I love the idea around finding somebody who is succinct. I suggest an engineer. Find an engineer
Good
because
point, good
they'll cut
point.
you to
Yeah,
the quick. They will
yeah,
cut you to the quick because they're linear, right?
yes.
I know that if you saw my wall right now, I have those 3M poster papers, and
Mhm.
I go through a 30 pack of 3M poster paper probably once every two months.
I
So that
believe it.
means every other day or every third day or, you know, a couple times a week, I actually have a new poster paper. My one wall is completely blank if I didn't have poster paper on it. And that's what I'm constantly working on. Like I'm always working. And I think that a lot of creatives are like that. And so it's really hard to bring that time in. And if you have a fear of disappointing, you just don't step out in front.
Well, let me in kind of incorporate what we've discussed so far. If you think, "All right, I'm going to speak to this group, who's going to be there?" Oh, these are young people coming up and they're starting their first jobs, or these are people who are startups or thinking about it, or these are people who are ready to go to the next level in their career. So think about the demographic and think, what is it? So this is step one. What what do I know a little bit more of that I could share with them? It's kind of like when a new dance craze used to come out, we would just teach it to all our friends. The first person who learned it would teach it to others. It's much the same. You don't have to be the world's biggest expert. You know some things that could help that particular group. So once you've identified this will help them, this takes away from why should I be here? Do I deserve to be here? Because you think they might make more money than me. Some of them might have fancier titles than me, but at this moment in time, I have information that will help them. With that in mind, you write it to match their thinking. If it's a bunch of tech people, you'll write it differently than if they were a bunch of PR and marketing people. But the
Yeah.
bottom line is you write to their brain. So one, we've taken care of, is this valuable? Am do I belong here? Yes. And two, will they be interested? Yes, you write it to their brains. And what you can do is call ahead and say, can you give me the names of some people who will be in the audience? Call them up ahead and say, hi, I'm the speaker next Thursday. I really want it to be valuable. Have you had any experience with this? And then you can say in your talk, before coming here, I called someone in the group. You don't say their name because that would take their attention away from you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 100 reasons why, but the main thing is you want to keep the attention to stay on you. I spoke to someone before the meeting, and this person said that, and then you teach your thing using their example. So let me tell you something. No one gets to the top of the mountain by falling there. If you want to be a good speaker, that is a learnable skill. So many people said to me, I can't imagine how to do it. That's why I captured my training in a book that is like a workbook, that when you follow it, you learn all the skills and techniques that TED Talk speakers use to hold your attention. And there are 45 tips on how to overcome public speaking fear. That is what I'm offering the world.
Excellent. And that's showing up. That's showing up and sharing. Can you share time with us in your journey of where you are today that without a moment of resiliency, we would not be having this conversation?
I can tell you right now, it's in my recent past. What I did for work for years and years and years was I happened to be good at taking complex ideas and making them simple and putting them into stories and examples and quotations. And I know how to facilitate a group. I was the senior trainer in the largest and oldest management seminar training company, the American Management Association, for over 20 years. I was their senior trainer. I taught public speaking, I taught assertiveness, I taught management skills for new supervisors. It was glorious, absolutely glorious. But when the recession hit in 2008, that business went away, and that was the only way I knew how to work. So I didn't really know how to start a business. And I just said, okay, I'm burning the boats. I have to learn this. And I spent a long, long time taking every course and watching every webinar and studying YouTube and learning how to make a business from this. And now pretty much my SEO brings me my clients, but also now that I am back into a functioning world. And I'll tell you something, talk about resilience and commitment. Every single day I had to give myself a pep talk of, yes, you don't know one thing about this and you're learning. And that's why you're not as good at this as other things that you've done in your life. So there was a real, mix between I don't know nothing to I used to know everything. So that was a fabulous experience to keep myself motivated and connected and focused. And
Yeah.
now I realize, a lot of people around the world, a lot of good people aren't speaking up. I mean, the big loudmouths are speaking up.
Mhm.
And it's probably because of public speaking fear, and I know how to fix it. So that's what led me to being in this conversation with you.
I
Is I know how to do it, and I really am interested in people learning how.
I believe you are a trailblazer because what you faced in '08 is what so many corporate women are facing right now. And
Mhm,
corporate work is not entrepreneurial work. It's not.
mhm,
It's a totally different world. And then we're going to layer on the fact that there's so much technology involved because it's not your right fit client most likely is not physically in your backyard. So you have to employ technology,
mhm,
right? You have to
mhm.
actually employ the trusted and true, which is becoming an author, becoming a speaker, having a program. You have to have all that. That's all the tried and true, and then we layer in technology on top of it. And technology can make people feel really uncomfortable because it's moving at absolute light speed. I mean, I was talking to my husband the other day, going, "Can you imagine if medicine was moving as
Oh.
fast as technology, I would live to 200 years old, and I'd be hot doing it. I could have an Instagram page. Like I said to somebody earlier, I'd love to show you my six pack, but it's in the fridge. So the reality is that some of the best minds, the best stories, the best leading, the best teaching are not being shared
And
because
I think
there's so
yeah.
many things
Mhm,
going on.
mhm. As far as people, I used to be a senior trainer in it's called outplacements. When executives were laid off, I would come in and help them decide what they're going to do next, write their resumes. I don't even tell anybody I do that anymore. I don't want to write any more resumes for anyone. But what I found with people is that if they wanted to do something new, well, they had to learn how to do it. So put aside the fact that you are excellent at many, many things now. Take a look at what do I like to do? Some people, like me, my favorite thing was to be the star in someone else's company. Some people have this urge to start their own company. Look at what you like to do. Do you prefer large organizations, smaller organizations? And figure out, as long as the last thing you did is gone, you don't have to do the same thing again. But I can tell you, you got to pay your dues. The good news is that I used to pay so much money for courses. Now every expert in their early years made YouTube videos, so you can see the best stuff just by
Oh, yeah.
studying YouTube. I learned a lot from there. I saw endless. If you looked at my calendar for those years, webinar after webinar, and I often would learn one or two, maybe one tip from each one, but you take 100 of them, you'll learn a
Yep,
lot of good stuff. And that's what has made me who I am today. So once I went through that learning curve and I combined it with who I was already,
yep.
it surprised me. And it's been way fun. And the thing is, if you want the princess, you gotta slay the dragon.
I love that. I love that. I think that a lot of people also need to be looking at who they're learning from. The reality is, and don't get me wrong, I love all the Robins out there. Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins. I love, Dare to Lead with
Mhm.
Brene Brown. I love them all. However, if if you are needing implementation steps for the next step, spending $2,000 on a Tony Robbins mega course may not get you there. We tend to move faster. So think of it like the fireman's drill. When we have is one person running out to the lake, grabbing the water, running back to the house, dropping it, going to be as effective as lining up 10 people and
Ah,
passing those buckets back and forth, back and forth. All you need is to find that person that is the next step in front of you. Have them pass that hand back.
mhm.
And you know what? I truly believe that we all have the capacity, if we're truly looking to do it, to be like Brene Brown, to be like Mel Robbins, to be like, however, it may not just be on the biggest stage. It may be on a stage that has the most impact, which is the next leader. And we forget that, how important that is. I loved how you talk about getting to the top of the mountain, right? We don't get to the top of the mountain by falling forward. We just don't. We get to the top of the mountain through collaboration and support and having a plan and executing. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, 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 right? Come on.
Mhm.
These are all purpose, these all have a reason. I want to talk about the practice and implementation. You are a published author, and I think you mentioned your book earlier. Can you walk us through your book? What's the name of it? Where can we find it? And what can the reader expect from your book?
I'll start with what they can expect. They will be able to speak to any group at any time. They will be able to handle the tormenting, harassing voice that's in their head, always saying, I don't think you should do this. It's going to be a disaster. You've seen people be a disaster. You're going to be, it's just full of stuff. It teaches you how to handle that. And it also teaches you how to write killer openers, how to make the content really compelling. Because when you speak, it's natural for people's minds to wander. So you need to grab them back in multiple ways with the writing, which with your voice, with even your body language. So there, as I said, the people that you speak to, who speak at meetings, that every time they speak, everyone pays attention to them the whole time. That is not random. They might have come from an outgoing family, but trust me, they have really refined their skills. When you look at a TED Talk, there's a reason why they hold your attention the whole time. So this book, since I train TED Talk speakers, it covers all of that. When people read this book, I'll tell you the feedback that I've gotten, mostly from people who are fearful of public speaking. It's life-changing, Reesa. I didn't know these things. Oh my gosh, what a difference this has made. I can speak the night before, but my friends who are good speakers who've looked at it said, oh, I learned like 4 techniques to capture and hold people's attention and regain it after I've lost it that I really didn't know before, because TED Talk speakers are very special, and to know their skills and techniques is a good thing. I've held nothing back. This is really, I'm not putting a book that you have to find me and be coached by me afterward. It's complete. People who read this and take it as a course, essentially, people who are afraid of public speaking would never read an academic book. So I wrote it. Actually, maybe you can see the size. Look at the size of it. It looks like a children's book, and it's written very simply. And at the end of each chapter, there's a summary, and there's a separate line at the end of each chapter, Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear, that reinforces the story tells you how Mr. Bear did it and you follow and do what he did. But if you want a quick review afterward, there's a summary at the end. It's really a superb book. And here's the result. Anyone reading it will become a better public speaker that afternoon. It's not like you wait until a big talk to get better. You use it that afternoon when you're on the phone to the person who has to do something at your house. You'll speak better. You will transfer your information easier. And the big thing that it covers, even people who are comfortable with speaking have occasional public speaking fear. It teaches how to stop the harassing voice, not cover it, not cope with it, not ignore it, but eliminate it. I was very lucky. The person who invented cognitive therapy in the last century, I studied with him in his 90s. So I really got it from the person who invented it, and I very, very quickly get to the point and walk you through how to fix yourself. You don't need a course. You don't need a class. Do anything you can, but get better at this simply because it'll make you feel better. If when you speak afterward, you just beat yourself up, well, that's just silly. Instead, spend that time that you spent beating yourself up on the front end, preparing yourself to do a really great job.
It's interesting you talk about the voices in our head. A lot of us who do speak and are animated, I don't know, I shouldn't say a lot of us. I know my personal experience was I didn't understand body language. So people were they were done with the conversation and I was still talking, and they would be looking at their watch, have one foot out the door, and so it really
Oh,
diminished diminished the confidence within what I was speaking about, and instead of understanding, so I actually took a public speaking course,
hmm,
to learn body language, and in my real estate career, 22 years, top 1% for over half of those,
wow.
civic awards, industry awards, you name it, I learned that engineers will not list with me because I talk too much, and they're getting a confused mind does not buy. So
Mhm.
I learned very early on in my conversations, I would walk in and I say, I'm so super excited to be here at your home. I am looking forward to working with you. Let me tell you how it's going to go. But first, I want to give you permission. I talk really fast, I talk a lot, and I go into sometimes too much detail. I am giving you permission to tell me, whoa, Kim, okay, Kim, let's move it on, let's back it up, or we're good. Because you will not offend me because I'm telling you how I communicate and I want to give you an opportunity to communicate back with me. So I think that for me was a big one, is to understand how I communicate and the frequency of which I communicate at.
Mhm.
And understanding that if you want people to connect with you, you need to understand that your level is not everyone's level. And
Oh,
if you
oh,
want to be
God.
successful,
Mhm.
you know,
Actually, that was one of the things that Dr. Ellis used to teach. He had like 8 or 10 lists of cognitive disorders, and one is that you expect people to think and act the way you think and act. That's not the way to speak, and that's not the way to be happy, actually. And that is that if you're going to speak to people, you think, who are they? For example, I could have written this book as an academic book and used all kinds of fancy academic words. That was not my goal. My goal was to be understood by as many people as
yeah,
possible. It's being published in multiple languages. It's already selling internationally because pretty much everyone who realizes, oh, a
yeah,
book that fixes public speaking fear. But I wrote the book the same way that television writes and the same way that movies write, and they write to an 8th grade reading level. If you want to show off and be smart, do it with your friends when you go out. If you want people to listen to you, you want the information to just easily flow into their brain using their thinking, their background, their analogies, and stories that they can relate to.
excellent. I want to share with everybody a TED talk that had huge impact on me when it comes to creating vision within our business. And as you know, that we have a lot of women that watch this show or listen to this show that are entrepreneurs that are building their coaches and stuff. Mary Morrissey talks about vision boarding. And what I loved about Mary is A, it was succinct, it was beautiful. B, it also proved to me that do not use excuse as age. Do not use excuse as revenue. Do not use excuses anything. And there are no excuses. Either speak up or shut up. But do not say, I wish I could have, right? If you
Really.
got something to offer, do it and reach out to Reesa Woolf here. Her book is going to help you at least get that first foot in front of the next foot of putting that talk together. And half the challenge is having a plan. People don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. And here is a plan to help you feel confident in your talk. Reesa, where can people find you?
Oh, well, I'm all over the web. Just imagine a wolf eating a Reese's peanut butter cup. My name is Reesa Woolf. The big thing is just to look for Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear. It's on Amazon and everything. You can find me. My website is confident with a T at the end, confidentspeaking.com. Or just write a note to Kim and she'll forward it to me. Can I say one tiny thing that to add to the last thing you mentioned? Actually,
Yep.
two. One is, if you think Kim is wonderful, do you notice how she said, I took this course and I took this class and I took this course? That's what it is. It's not only learning, but it's implementing one little thing from each one that day and moving on from there. I would say that that's most important. And the second thing I wanted to say was start small. If you
Yeah.
want to give a TED talk, think of the topic, write a basic talk and say to your friends, hey, I'll come to your workplace at lunchtime and speak for free because I'm working on a talk that I'm working into a TED talk. The only price is I'm going to give an evaluation at the end. If people would say their favorite parts, the parts they should change, should anything be switched around. That's how I made my first keynote good. I gave it probably 50 times for free. And then someone said, oh, how much do you charge for this? And I went, oh, I'm on my way. But that's the advice for new speakers. Start where it's not threatening. If no one's paying you, your self-talk is not, oh, I have to be fabulous, because they're going, hey.
Yep. Yeah. And they say, you know, some of the best work you'll do, you do not get a direct cash up front. There is so many opportunities. And in this world where God loved the millennials, they taught us that side hustle, the gig economy, all these things. That's where we're at, folks. That's where we're at. Watch the pennies and the dollars will count for themselves. So that's what we've got today. What I want you to do, Reese, is I want you to take us out with a quote. What's a quote that's tickling your fancy today that you think everybody should maybe ponder?
You never, ever have to be a confident speaker. No one will know when you turn on your confident self that inside you want to throw up the whole time.
There you go, folks. Just carry some Listerine. It's okay. It's okay. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what you did not deliver, what you intended to deliver, or how nervous you are. They only know that you showed up and you shared. And that's what I got for you today here at Kim Talks Resilience. I'm your host, Kim Hayden. And if you ever feel that your resiliency is lagging that wee bit, I want you to listen and lean in to our resilient community. You can go over to resilientgift.com. That is resilientgift.com. And you can sign right up. I'm not going to ask you a credit card. There's no sneaky renewal fees. We're going to make sure that you get our bi-monthly magazine. You get notified when these amazing podcasts with amazing Reesa Woolf comes online. And you know what? Just know I'm in your corner. Remember, success leaves clues. Listen to this podcast. We've got lots of clues. Until next time, be good to yourself. Thank you for joining us here today at Kim Talks Resilience. I'm your host, Kim Hayden, and I'd love to invite you to our resilient community at resilientgift.com. That's resilientgift.com, and we'll send you our magazine and tickets for upcoming events and all sorts of cool things we do here. So be sure to keep watching. And you know what? Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, because we all know that sharing is caring.